Hello, what is going on, guys? Today we are ranking every World Cup 2022 team. While ranking, I rely on two main aspects: how many games did they win, tied or lost, and how far did they get in the entire tournament. And also on a small factor that how hard opponents did they face. Anyways, let's begin. The first one is Senegal. Senegal played pretty well in the group matches. They won 2 matches and lost 1. In the round of 16, they faced one of the favourites, England, and lost 3-0. So overall, they won 2 matches and lost 2 matches, which is a pretty decent result. I think B tier is solid for them. The next one is Portugal. Portugal kind of disappointed me. Yes, they topped the group, but still managed to lose against South Korea somehow. They advanced the round of 16 by eliminating Switzerland 6-1, which was very impressive, but then lost to Morocco in the quarterfinals. Their final record was 3 wins and 2 losses, but just because they didn't really face any top teams and still didn't play really well, I wouldn't put them higher than B tier. And now we got Australia. Australia got into pretty tough group, but still advanced the group by winning 2 matches and losing 1. In the round of 16, they faced Argentina, but didn't give them an easy win. Yes, they lost 2-1 against Argentina, but overall, I think they played pretty well. Australia won 2 matches and lost 2 matches, but considering they were up against 2 finalists, they did pretty well. Solid B tier for Australia. And now my personal favourite, the Netherlands. Netherlands topped the group by winning 2 matches and tying 1 match. In the round of 16, they won United States 3-1 and then faced Argentina in the quarterfinals. The game got pretty violent and went into extra time because of a late equaliser, but Netherlands lost the game in the penalty shootout. They got pretty far and only lost because of penalties. They lost 1, tied 1 and won 3 matches, but I still wouldn't put them in S tier because the only tough opponent they faced was Argentina. The Netherlands goes to A tier. And now we got Ecuador. I do feel bad for Ecuador because their start was so promising. They won the first match and tied with the toughest team in the group. They only had to win against Senegal or at least get a draw, but they didn't. They lost to Senegal, and just like that, they didn't advance the group. Ecuador won 1, tied 1 and lost 1 match, but didn't qualify for the round of 16. So they are the first team to go to C tier. And now we have the biggest disappointment in this tournament, Belgium. After the 2018 World Cup, Belgium was the top 1 team in the world for 4 years straight in the FIFA rankings. Belgium's expectations were quite high, but they didn't even advance the group stage. They struggled during the first game against Canada and won them only 1-0. Then they lost to Morocco 2-0 and got a 0-0 draw with Croatia. Belgium got 1 win, 1 loss and 1 draw. They didn't advance the group stages, which was a big shock for every football fan in the world. They only scored 1 goal in the entire tournament, and I am completely honest with you, they don't deserve to be higher than C tier. And now Switzerland. Just like Senegal and Australia, Switzerland won 2 and lost 1 group match and placed second in the group. They lost 6-1 against Portugal, and that was the worst game of the tournament for them. But we cannot forget that Switzerland faced 2 top teams, Brazil and Portugal. They won 2 matches and lost 2 matches. So just like Senegal and Australia, they get B tier. The next one is France, one of the finalists. They topped the group but lost 1 game against Tunisia, but that wasn't a big deal because France had rotated the squad so much for this match, and players like Mbappe, Griezmann and Lloris started on the bench. They won 3-1 against Poland in the round of 16 and won 2-1 against England in the quarterfinals. In the semi-finals, they won Morocco 2-0. The final against Argentina was one of the most memorable matches in football history. Mbappe scored a hat-trick and the game ended with 3-3 draw, but France lost with penalties. Their final record was 5 wins and 2 losses. Definitely one of the best teams in the tournament, S tier. Now the United States. United States finished their group in 2nd place. They got a draw against Wales and England and won Iran. The start was very promising for them, but they lost 3-1 against Netherlands in the round of 16, so their run wasn't quite long. United States got 2 draws, 1 victory and 1 loss. The draw against England was pretty impressive, not gonna lie, and they didn't play bad at all in my opinion, considering the tough opponents like England and Netherlands. C tier. The next is Spain, and yes, they did disappoint me as well. Their start was super promising as they won Costa Rica 7-0. Their second match was a 1-1 draw against Germany, but this is where their downfall began. They lost their last group stage match against Japan 2-1 and finished second in the group after Japan. The round of 16 was not much better as they lost to Morocco in penalties. Spain got 1 win, 1 draw and 2 losses. Just because of the big victory against Costa Rica and a draw against Germany, I have to put Spain in B tier. And now we got Poland, who barely advanced the group. Their only good performance was against Saudi Arabia, where they won 2-0. Otherwise, they lost to Argentina and tied with Mexico. Yes, they did advance the group, but then lost to France 3-1. Overall, they got 1 win, 1 draw, and 2 losses. If they had won Mexico, for example, I would have put them in B tier, but with just 1 good performance against Saudi Arabia, that doesn't seem enough. I know they faced 2 hard opponents, but I think Poland goes to C tier, but they were super close to being B tier. Next is Uruguay. I was pretty surprised they didn't advance the group stage. Their only hard opponent was Portugal in my opinion, but they didn't advance due to goal difference. They got 1 win, 1 loss and 1 draw, but that wasn't enough for advancing. I thought Uruguay will be at least B tier, but due to poor performances, Uruguay goes to C tier. I don't even want to talk about Germany. I had pretty high expectations for Germany, but for the second time in a row, they didn't even advance the group. At first, everything seemed to be going well. They were leading against Japan, but then managed to let in 2 goals. They got a draw against Spain, which was not bad at all, but the win against Costa Rica just wasn't enough to go through. They got 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 draw. They are super close to B tier, but they conceded 5 goals in just 3 matches, which is definitely definitely too much, so that's why they go to C tier. And now Mexico. Nothing much to say about them. They got as much points as Poland, but conceded just one more goal, and that's why they didn't advance the group stages. Mexico got 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss. They got a draw with Poland and had almost identical results with them, so Mexico goes to C tier as well. The next is Qatar, and just as expected, they got 0 wins and 3 losses. They conceded 7 goals and scored just 1 goal. They were definitely the worst team of the tournament. Qatar's players also lacked with personal brilliance, and they faced only one tough team, so they are the first team to go to F tier without a doubt. I have never thought Morocco was a good football nation, and they have always been the underdogs, but this time they shocked the whole world. They topped the group and got a win against Belgium, then won Spain in the round of 16 and Portugal in the quarter-finals. Their journey ended with a loss against France in the semi-finals, and they got 4th place in the tournament. Overall, they got 4 wins, 1 draw and 2 losses, but they won 3 top-tier teams like Belgium, Spain and Portugal, and they had no big losses, and that's why they go to S tier for sure. Now we have Wales. Wales was definitely one of the weakest teams of the tournament. They lost 2 matches and got 1 draw. Nothing much to say about them. They conceded 6 goals and scored only 1 goal. Just because they got 1 draw and faced tough opponent, England, I won't put them in F tier, but they are not going higher than D tier. Next team is Tunisia. Tunisia won France's rotated squad, got a draw against Denmark and lost to Australia. The funny thing is that they conceded only 1 goal and scored only 1 goal in the entire tournament. They were actually pretty close to advancing to round of 16, but the 1-0 loss against Australia was the reason why they didn't. Overall, they got 1 win, 1 draw and 1 loss. Tunisia goes to solid C tier. And now Serbia. Serbia wasn't at their best either, as they got 4th place in their group. They lost 2 games and got 1 draw, just like Wales. Yes, they were in a group with Brazil and Switzerland, but they should have at least won Cameroon. I cannot see them higher than D tier. Next team is Iran. Iran won 1 group match and lost 2. They had a big loss against England, with the score being 6-2. They won Wales but lost to United States. Yes, they had more points than Wales, but they don't deserve to be in C tier with those 2 losses. So that's why Iran goes to solid D tier. Now Denmark. Denmark was a big disappointment as well. They had 1 draw and 2 losses. They finished the group at 4th place and got only 1 point. However, their losses were not that big. They lost 2-1 against one of the finalists, France, and 1-0 against Australia. Their only point came from 0-0 draw against Tunisia, although they faced a top-tier team like France and didn't lose by much. I cannot put them higher than D tier, as they got only 1 point and finished their group at last place. The next team is Ghana. Ghana lost 2 games and won 1 game. However, the game against Portugal was close. They lost 3-2, but didn't make it easy for Portugal. They won South Korea and lost to Uruguay. They finished last in the group, but gave out everything, and it was not easy to get the wins against them. But because of the 2 losses and last place in the group, Ghana is going to C tier. And now we have Costa Rica. They started their World Cup journey terribly, losing 7-0 to Spain. However, they pulled themselves together as they won their second match against Japan 1-0, but still finished the group at last place because of the third game, which was a loss. Against Germany, they lost 2 games and won 1. Yes, they were in a tough group, but that 7-0 loss is little too much. I cannot put Costa Rica higher than D tier. The next one is Croatia. They finished second in the group by getting 2 draws, 1 against Belgium and 1 against Morocco. In the round of 16, they won Japan with penalties, and in the quarterfinals, they won Brazil with penalties as well. But the semi-final was a big 3-0 loss against Argentina, and then they had a rematch against Morocco and won it 2-1, so they finished by getting 3rd place in the tournament. They got 4 wins, 2 draws and 1 loss. Yes, they won Brazil, but I have to mention they won them with penalties, and they also won Japan with penalties. Not to mention that 3-0 loss against Argentina, which clearly shows that they were not the top team of the tournament, but they were close. So Croatia will get a solid A tier. Oh well, Canada. They lost all their 3 group matches, but I wouldn't say they played badly. They lost only 1-0 to Belgium and 2-1 to Morocco. Okay, the game against Croatia was bad. They lost 4-1, but I wouldn't say they were an F tier team. Yes, they lost all their matches, but I felt like they were a bit unlucky. A very weak D tier, but they were definitely better than Qatar. Cameroon. Cameroon was definitely not an easy opponent for anyone. They lost 1-0 to Switzerland, got a 3-3 draw against Serbia, and yes, they won Brazil 1-0. Brazil's team had a lot of rotations, but still, a win is a win. Overall, I think they gave out a solid battle. They won 1, lost 1, and drew 1 match. They didn't qualify for the round of 16, but they got my respect. C tier. Yes, you've guessed it, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia shocked the world by winning Argentina 2-1 in the Group C opening match. It was a super promising start for them, but sadly it was their first and last victory in the tournament. They lost their second game against Poland and third game against Mexico, but they gave out a great battle. Saudi Arabia won 1 and lost 2 matches. I think Saudi Arabia deserves to be at C tier. The next is Japan. Japan made a big surprise by winning against Spain and Germany, but somehow lost to Costa Rica. They still topped the group, which gave a shock to every football fan in the world. However, their journey didn't last long as they lost to Croatia in the round of 16 in a penalty shootout, but still they made some memorable progress. They won 2 matches and lost 2 matches. Japan goes to B tier, and now South Korea. Korea's start was bad, they got a draw with Uruguay and lost to Ghana, but then won Portugal by surprise. They advanced the group with 1 win, 1 draw and 1 loss, but they got knocked out in the round of 16 with a 4-1 loss against Brazil. But still, they proved that they are capable of winning top tier teams like Portugal and advanced the group stages, so I think B tier is good for South Korea. Argentina, the champions, but their start wasn't promising at all as they lost to Saudi Arabia, but they pulled themselves together and made it to the final. They won Poland, Mexico, Australia, Netherlands, Croatia, and then after a great final, France. Messi finally fulfilled his dream. What a journey that was. They lost 1 match and won 6 matches. Their only loss against Saudi Arabia is a small thing next to the big wins against teams like Netherlands, Croatia, and France. S tier for sure. And Brazil, one of the biggest favourites, who shockingly got eliminated pretty fast. They won 2 group matches and lost 1 to Cameroon, but as I said, they had rotated their squad so much for this match, so it wasn't a big deal. Having topped their group, they got a big 4-1 win against South Korea in the round of 16. But this is when their promising journey ended. They lost to Croatia with penalties in the quarter-final. I have to be honest, they were quite unlucky, and their overall performances were pretty good. They won 3 games and lost 2, but their overall gameplay was top tier. They have to go to A tier. And last but not least, England. Their start was super promising. They won Iran 6-2, tied with United States and won Wales 3-0, topped their group without any problems, won Senegal 3-0 in the round of 16, and this is where their run ends. They lost to France 2-1 in the quarter-final. They got 3 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss, but their performance was on world-class level, and they deserve to go to A tier. Anyways, this was my list, and I got to say it looks pretty accurate, considering that I was relying on facts too. For me, the 2022 tournament was definitely something special, and I cannot wait for the next World Cup. Please like and subscribe as it would mean the world to me. I love you guys. Peace.